Season 6, the best season of Game of Thrones yet. This Sunday marks the finale of the most recent season of Game of Thrones, and in preparation for that, I thought it'd be good to look back at Season 6 as a whole. And we're going to look at some of your tweets to hear your thoughts on the season. I'm going to be talking extensively about what happened in Season 6 and the prior seasons, so if you haven't watched Game of Thrones and you tend to catch up, or you haven't watched this season, you might want to save this video until you've caught up. Game of Thrones' 6th season was uncharted territory for the show because it was the first time it had passed the books. I would say my feelings on the season, probably like most people, are mixed. However, I lean much more towards the positive. Overall, I think this might be my favorite season since Season 3. And that's because it felt like it finally had direction again. After the infamous Red Wedding that ended Robb Stark's storyline and Season 3, and the Purple Wedding that began Season 4 and killed off Joffrey, the show's most reliable bad guy, the show felt kind of aimless. It had successfully trimmed down most of its major story threads, the death of Ned at the beginning of Season 1, and then the end of the Stark Rebellion, and didn't seem to be in any real hurry to progress its other major storylines, like Jon at the Wall, or Dany and her journey to Westeros especially. Now, things are finally happening again that are progressing the overall story. Brienne is finally able to join up with Sansa in Episode 1, Jon is resurrected in Episode 2, and those were some of the weakest episodes of the season overall. We also got Hodor holding the door, which I think was the best episode of the season. Sandor Clegane, the Hound, returned. Dany burning all the Khals to death and leading the Dothraki once again. In fact, Meereen was probably the biggest improvement overall. Dany's storyline since Season 1 has mostly been his stalling tactic till she can finally get to Westeros. So everything's clicking into place and moving her towards her goal of Westeros was very refreshing. Plus, we got the Battle of the Bastards, or as I like to call it, Saving Private Rickon, which was one of the most sweeping and cinematic and definitely the most expensive episodes this show has ever done. Or I guess by default, any show has ever done. Now, if we're being honest, there was some sloppiness that snuck its way into the season. Rickon, we hardly knew ye. And how did Dany learn to control Drogon? Did she binge How to Train Your Dragon on Netflix? But overall, the energy that this renewed sense of purpose gave the show is palpable. For the first time in a long time, I cannot wait to see what happens next. This season has delivered on things I've been hoping for a long time. The aforementioned Sansa and Brienne. The Starks are back in Winterfell. Jon Snow was resurrected. So what else is there? I desperately would like this season to end with Dany headed out of Meereen towards Westeros. It appears with the most recent episode, now that she has the ships from the Iron Islands, she has her dragons, she has the Dothraki, she seems primed and ready to go. The only outlier is Theon and Yara's uncle, Euron. Hopefully he doesn't screw up stuff so much that we get another stall on Dany finally leaving Meereen. As far as the next season goes, I'd like it to continue its trend of interlocking the stories. I'd like to spend more time with Bran and kind of understanding his powers and what he's seeing and how it plays into the larger plot line. I'd like more mysteries solved. I'd like final confirmation on L plus R equals J. I'd like the show to start paying off some of the things it's set up since Season 1. If things continue like they have in Season 6, all signs point to that being the case. Now, what did you guys have to say? I asked your opinions on Twitter and I got some great tweets. Andy at Wonderless Light asked, what do you think is going to happen with the Dorne storyline? I have a theory, but it's pretty underdeveloped. Please let me know your theory in the comments down below. I don't know. It's been basically abandoned, right? I actually think that was probably for the best. The Dorne plotline has been underwhelming. I'm hoping that it crops back up right when Cersei thinks she's got everything covered. Right as she feels like she's got the Faith Militant back in the corner and hopefully dealt with, because I'm kind of over that plotline. I'd like Dorne to spring up again at the least opportune moment, because I think that would create the best stories. Maria Jose Rodriguez at Maria Jane Yo-Yo said, I'm glad the Stark sigil will be back in the opening credits at Winterfell. My favorite shot was Jon and the horses charging at him. It was so cool to see that Stark banner lowered again and finally have that resolved. And also that battle was beautiful. My favorite shots were that where the horses are charging at Jon, and also the scene where Jon is pulling himself out of the mire of bodies of people fighting. They were very evocative, and even though that fight went pretty much how most anybody would have predicted it, was still engaging, and there was enough twists and turns that it kept you on your feet. Twain at Real Twain Teskey said, did you find it ironic Daenerys made Yara denounce the quote-unquote iron lifestyle while she's commanding the Dothraki army? Now, she probably did the same thing with the Dothraki. We haven't seen them. We just saw them take out some of the Sons of the Harpy, which, good, because screw those guys. She's probably asking the same thing of the Dothraki as she's asking for the people of Iron Islands. I don't think it's going to work out for the best overall. You know, when you play one of those video games that you're able to make multiple choices and it affects the ending, and even some good decisions you made ended kind of poorly. I think this is one of those that when the show ends and it does its recap, it'll be like, oh, and the Iron Islands people went back to raiding, because what else are they going to do? Sean Dawson Stevens at Shawnson said, this season of Game of Thrones has really felt like the beginning of the end, moving everyone to where they need to be for the home stretch. And it finally seems like the quote-unquote good guys are getting a foothold again. I don't trust it, though not a bit. I feel the same way, and it's one of the things I've liked about the season is these characters that have been continuously pulled apart and moved further and further away from each other across the map are finally reconnecting, and it feels like the show has an end game again, and it hasn't forgotten about it. Now, as you talk about the good guys getting a foothold and not trusting it, that's probably true on the micro level. There will be some losses. There have to be some losses. We've got some big wars coming up. However, with all the negative that's happened, it's time for that pendulum to start swinging back to the good guys' direction, although I could be wrong. Ashley at AshRLH said, do you think the Rickon being killed scene was to show Jon that he really should have listened to Sansa, or to provoke him? I think the answer to that is yes, to both. I think it was to give Jon a more personal stake in that battle, and also to show that he should have listened to Sansa more, which I hope proves out later on in the seasons that Sansa becomes a more trusted advisor, because if he'd listened to Sansa, that battle would have gone a lot better for them. It's also unfortunate that we didn't spend any time with Rickon this season once he came back. I don't think he even spoke a line. So it really was to emphasize the stake for Sansa and Jon, and Rickon as a character didn't really matter. He was a plot function. So that's what you guys thought. Thank you guys for tweeting me. Please keep the conversation going on Twitter or in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Please let me know what other topics you'd like me to discuss. We got a lot of Justice League news this week. Let me know if you want to talk about that and what I hope to see in the Justice League movie. Give me some of your ideas and let me know what you think I should discuss in later episodes. Also, Sam Basher and myself are starting a brand new podcast. If you missed Superhero Roundup, please tune into our new podcast, Only Stupid Answers. Our first episode drops on Monday. If you want to keep up to date on everything we have planned, please follow us on Twitter at Only Stupid Answers. Our first episode is talking about how to get into comics. That's a common question that both he and I get, and we go about answering in our first episode. And it should be a lot of fun. Please expect to see it on Monday. We're excited to share it with you guys. See you then.